I rate Swamp Thing. The Marvel character Swamp Thing slithers out into an ongoing series in 1997 from the twisted minds of Jim DeMatteis and Roger McCormack. This series came up in another video a while back, and a few persons asked if it were any good. And I felt bad because my response was, I don't know, I don't understand it. I thought I would look at it. The first few issues are straightforward anyway, but when we get to Sorrow of the Fallen Stars and Asmodeus Q Terminus, I am somewhat lost. Not helping matters is that the series ends with its story unresolved and never addressed again, with its intended ending only detailed in certain indie book profiles and summarised quickly in a Spider-Man annual by the same creative team. One of the obstacles we face with the series is Roger McCormack's art, which I have always found to rely on me having a good day to go with. He is a very eclectic artist. A page like this I think is quite okay, but we get a lot of collage. We get a lot of incorporation of photographs and mixed media, a lot of graphics work. Well, actually, here, look at this. This is a good example of the art for this series. How trippy and out there the art can get. Avant-garde, inventive, Vertigo-esque, or if you were in a mood, modern toss. Sometimes you just want a picture of Wonder Woman standing there smiling. I'm not in that sort of frame of mind today, and this page is actually excellent. Great art piece introducing us to the title character, and Jim DeMatteis' script on this page, it really sets the character, or the lack of a character, up well. Terrific page here. And one of the good things about this Swamp Thing series is that it really doesn't require you to know much about the character. Its origin story is about the only prerequisite knowledge for this. Its origin. And then I think one issue by Steve Gerbil. Swamp Thing was created by Lenny Wen and Adam Neils. Wikipedia won't tell you this. It was a rehash of Lenny Wen's Man-Thing character at DC, which was at the time a one-off anthology character. And by the way, the woman on that cover there, the model used is Lewis Simon, future comics writer. Lenny Wen liked the idea and wanted to explore it more. However, he never actually got to do that at Marvel, with the character's debut being in Savage Tales issue 1 by other people. Roger Thompson, Gary Conman, and Grey Matter. No, I can't call him Grey Matter. I call Stephen Isles that Gary Morrow, I suppose. That told us Swamp Thing's origin, with more details being provided later in the story by Lenny Wen and Adam Neils, which was incorporated as a flashback into the character's second appearance in a Ka-Zar story. Alec Holland was a human who was working on an experimental formula for the government, alongside Mockingbird, but that part of Mockingbird's history is barely ever mentioned again. The project is sabotaged, and terrorists from A.I.M seek to steal the chemical they have created. In a moment of desperate panic to avoid his creation falling into the hands of enemies, Alec Holland destroys all his notes and injects himself with the serum. He then falls into a swamp, which triggers his transformation into Swamp Thing, a shambling plant creature with no real memory of who it once was. It has no ability for speech or communication, and very, very limited capacity for meaningful intelligence. It lurks around the swamps of the Everglades, and it has a burning touch which affects those exhibiting fear, with the instinct of most who encounter Swamp Thing being to fear it. That is about 80% of what you need to know to understand the character for this issue. It doesn't hurt that Swamp Thing never really has a character or deep characterization by design. We have a sequence, a fairly typical sequence for Swamp Thing, wherein random civilians encounter it in the marshes. This is almost the stock Swamp Thing scene. Someone, usually a Florida tourist, stumbles onto Swamp Thing coming out of a swamp, and they either run away or they are burnt by Swamp Thing's touch. The obvious problem with a character like Swamp Thing is that there isn't an actual character to build a series around. Swamp Thing is a presence. It is an idea, but it isn't meant to be capable of much depth intellectually. So we do establish a secondary protagonist, and in this case it is Abigail Arcane. This too is a character almost exclusively from Swamp Thing's origin story. She only ever appeared one other time, and it is rather odd that she didn't factor more into Swamp Thing's history. But I do think the idea was she possibly died in her last appearance. She is being kept awake at night by Swamp Thing. Ooh, what? Huh? Oh, that's dirty. Pardon my French. She is being haunted by images of Swamp Thing, because Swamp Thing burnt her face. Why? Well, let's jump back to Swamp Thing's origin. Abby was Alec Holland's lover, and it was she who betrayed the project to A.I.M. She was the traitor. She was shown to be completely heartless and evil in that original story. I think it is in a later issue, Steve Gerbil, maybe, where she re-encounters Swamp Thing and she gets her comeuppance. Her face is burnt by its hand. Again, that is all you need to know. Most of the information is in Swamp Thing's first appearance. I think it is only that encounter with Swamp Thing that comes later on. It always seemed weird to me that Abby was not a more significant or prominent character in Swamp Thing's comics. After its origin, she only really appears in flashbacks to its creation, and then that one issue where she was burnt. I think bringing her back is a great choice. Something else this series allows is for Jim DeMatteis to slowly touch base with some characters he has written previously, chiefly in Defenders. We get a couple of Defenders characters in this run. Doctor Strange here, he is naked. We get Silver Surfman, also technically naked. Seaman, almost naked. And we get a big showing for Slayer Man. And he wears clothes, but we do see him naked at one point. Here is Doctor Strange. He has mystically sensed a present danger to creation. And this has been written around the same time Jim DeMatteis was also writing the final issues of Doctor Strange's mag. And I think it's not long after his run on Silver Surfman had closed out. Doctor Strange senses Swamp Thing at the centre of the current peril. And we get another scene of Swamp Thing bothering another civilian. This one is a child rapist though. So he is tortured by Swamp Thing's hands. He is burnt for his deplorable sex crimes. This is a decent debut issue. I think it makes what follows a bit disappointing because what we have here is very straightforward. The first few issues of this series are digestible and easy to follow, but it quickly becomes tough to comprehend, tough to read, and Roger McCormack's art goes similar places as the writing and the ideas. Maybe this time around I won't get lost. Maybe I'll be able to understand it a bit better. But this first issue is too coherent for a series that becomes so incoherent. Abby Arcane, her redemption is maybe a bit too sudden, a bit too immediate, somewhat not entirely earned. She is forgiven too quickly by the story and the writer. But you do need an actual person in the mix when it comes to Swamp Thing. That was one of the things about the original Steve Gerbil stories I loved. Jennifer Hale was the obvious star of those, and she was great, a teenage Wiccan. And things got worse when she was dropped from the title and replaced by Steve Gerbil's insert for himself. This is, at this point, it is a great moody issue. And our big scene, I would estimate, is the reunion between Abigail and Alec. But Alec doesn't remember Abigail. Alec doesn't know who Abigail is. Alec doesn't remember who he is, let alone the woman who condemned him to this fate. Abigail, on the other hand, knows it all. She is facing the monster she created of a man she seduced and betrayed. The same creature that disfigured her. Powerful stuff. It's insane that it took this long for a writer to finally cotton on that there is proper story mileage to tell with Abby Arcane and Swamp Thing. There is mention here of an upcoming Zatanna series by Warren Sallis, a companion to his Satan's Son books, but it is never published. Swamp Thing, its lack of knowledge works in Abby's favour, and then here is Doctor Strange to end the issue, and I tell you what, it is far more obvious with Swamp Thing than it is with any other series to tell when characters are being used for narrative purposes. Doctor Strange is obviously being brought in to exposit and provide narrative, since our title star cannot do much of anything from a storytelling perspective. I do enjoy this first one though. I think it looks like a very promising new book from this offering. I wish a bit it had stayed with this more accessible approach, but I still give 7 thumbs up.